I'm Tim Ventura from AmericanAntiGravity.com, and I'm speaking today with Matt Savinar, who's written a book entitled The Oil Age is Over, which sells for $24.95 on lifeaftertheoilcrash.net. Matt, many scientists have reassuringly told us that the Earth may have another 100 years of remaining oil, but the premise of your book is that a crisis is due within the next 5 years. What does peak oil have to do with this?
Okay, all oil production follows the bell curve. This is true whether it's on an individual field in a nation or in the world as a whole. And we've been going up the upslope of the oil production curve since 1859 when the first commercial oil wells drilled. We've been going up the upslope of the global energy production curve ever since Adam and Eve, or whatever your belief system is about how people got here. Now, in regards to oil, so production, it goes up, it hits a peak, or more accurately, it's a multi-year plateau, and then it goes down. Now, the peak coincides with a point at which the respective oil reserve has been 50% depleted. So if you've got an oil well that has got 1,000 barrels of oil in it, that oil well is going to peak when you've extracted 500 barrels. Now, we've got, there's various estimates of how much oil the Earth was endowed with. It's looking like we were originally endowed with 2,000 billion barrels of oil, so it's 2 trillion barrels. We've consumed about 1 trillion. That puts us right at the peak. Now, even if we end up having 3 trillion, so we'd have, let me back up. We were originally endowed with 2 trillion. We've used 1 trillion. That means we're right at the 50% mark, right around the peak. Now, some people say, no, the Earth was originally endowed with 4 trillion, because these are really optimistic people. That would mean we have 3 trillion left. Now, the thing is, though, because of the exponential nature in which demand increases, even if we have 3 trillion barrels left in the ground, it will only put the crisis off by maybe 25 to 30 years. We will, at current levels of demand, if you project it out, it increases. We use 30 billion barrels per day, and you project a 2 to 3% increase per year. We will consume as much oil in the next 25 years as we have in the previous 150. Okay, so even if you triple the amount of oil we have in the ground, it's only going to push the peak back by maybe 1 generation.
And this is through the normal expansion of society, right? Just regular
right.
expansion.
We have a fractional, what's called a fractional reserve banking system. So money is created via loans. So if I want to open up a computer store, for instance, I take out a loan. Let's say I take out a loan for $10,000, and the bank says to me, you got to pay it back plus 10% interest within 1 year, okay, just to make the math simple. So that's $11,000 I got to pay back within 1 year. Now, I'm only going to take out that loan if I expect that there will be more money available in the future, so, more money than there is now. Now, the thing is, though, that money is really just a symbol for fossil fuel energy. An average computer, for instance, consumes 10 times its weight in fossil fuels during its construction. So what I'm really doing is I need to sell $11,000 worth of fossil fuels, fossil fuel energy that's been converted into a computer. And this is true for pretty much everything in our society. A car takes 90 barrels of oil, or maybe more than that. I forget. It takes a real large amount of oil to construct a car, to construct homes, to do everything. So money is really just a symbol for energy. We get most of our energy from fossil fuels. So the thing is, it's because the financial system is based on loans, and when you take out a loan, you got to pay it back with more. You pay back interest. It requires us to have a constantly increasing supply of energy. And then this is an aspect that almost everybody who learns about peak oil, they ignore altogether. They just focus on, well, we're going to find some miracle alternative. And then I never get questions about the financial aspects. That's the key issue. Even if we find a miracle alternative, it doesn't solve the problem of the financial collapse, because if there's a declining availability of energy, the monetary system can't adapt to that because you don't have the extra money to pay back your loans. Unless you just keep printing money, in which case you get hyperinflation and you get the 1920s Germany effect. So either way, civilization ends.
Absolutely. Well, so essentially what you're saying, at least part of it then, is the halfway point is the peak. And the conservative estimates, you put that 25, 30 years out, but the less conservative estimates, maybe a more realist view, would say that we're right on the edge of that doorstep. When it hits halfway gone...
The most optimistic estimates come from the United States Geological Survey. They say the peak is 2037. What that means, let's hypothetically say they're great. If we commit all of our resources to retrofitting our entire global economy to run on alternative fuels, maybe we can have some miracles and we'll get it accomplished. And I think as the USGS, these are the same people who in 1973, U.S. domestic production peaked in 1970. The USGS had no idea that it hit. They just were completely out to lunch. And then the Congress had to launch an investigation in 1973 to figure out, what the heck was going on. It's looking more like it's going to peak. We may be peaking right now. We're probably in the years 2000 to 2007 will probably be known as the petroleum plateau. Production failed to grow in 2001 and 2002. In 2003, it only grew by 0.5%, even though demand grew by 2%. 99% of there's three independent analysis that I'm aware of. One by Dr. Walter Youngquist, who's a geologist. One by Dr. Richard Duncan, who's a geologist. And then there's another one that just came out. These are not from necessarily the industry itself. It's not from the USGS. These are disinterested people. They're not on the payroll of anybody. I mean, I don't know where they get their money from, but they're not, there's no reason to doubt where they're coming from. And then Association for the Study of Peak Oil, which is a group of retired and now disinterested geologists. They all put the peak at 2007. One of the CEOs from Saudi Aramco, that's the largest oil company in the world, they have 25% of the world's oil reserves. He just came out and said that these estimates of the amount of oil they have in the Mideast are dangerously overestimated. It's coming from a guy who's an executive at Saudi Aramco. One of the executives at BP just came out and said that we're going to peak inside of 10 years. Matt Simmons, who's a real well-respected energy investment banker, he's very frequently quoted in the peak oil community. He's on Dick Cheney's Energy Task Force. He says oil is going to be $200 a barrel, $182 a barrel to be precise, by the end of the decade. So we're looking at a crisis not in the next 5 years, probably inside of the next. I mean, we're already in a crisis. We're fighting 2 oil wars, and we could be looking at a major economic meltdown inside of a few months, because Russia, in addition to oil production declining, you got Russia and China are both switching from buying oil in dollars to buying oil in euros, which will cause the dollar to crash.
Well, to move back to 1973, which you covered for a sec, a lot of people remember the oil crisis back then when prices just skyrocketed. There were rationing and long lines and, tons of shortages all over the country. How much worse will the upcoming oil crisis be in comparison?
That's like driving a car, or the 70s oil crisis. When you drive a car over one of those little speed bumps?
Sure.
You just slow down a little bit, but you keep going. Well, this is going to be like running your car into a wall at 90 miles an hour.
So it'll be
not even trying to put on the brakes. This is the onset of a new permanent condition. This is the first time this has ever happened in the history of humanity. We're not just talking about oil here. We're talking about energy. Energy production has never, on average, declined year after year on a global scale. We've always had an increasing amount of energy. This will be the first time that the world has never had an increasing amount of energy. For the rest, until from hundreds thousands, maybe millions of years, we will have to do with less and less energy with each passing year. So this is going to make everything from Noah's flood to World War II to the Great Depression to whatever. Nothing can compare to this. This is, the only thing you can maybe compare it to on a microcosm level would be what happened on Easter Island in the 16 to 1700s.
Oh, when they cut down the trees and thereby limited their ability to find wood and use that, right?
Right. They used timber to construct and to basically power their entire civilization. First, let me back up and tell you what we use oil for everything. People think you just put it into your cars, but like I was saying before, technology, computers, consume 10 times their weight in fossil fuels. Average piece of food in America, 9 out of every 10 calories comes from hydrocarbon energy. All pesticides come from oil. All fertilizers come from ammonia, which comes from natural gas. Average piece of food is transported 1,400 miles before it gets to your plate. All farm equipment is run using fossil fuels, tractors, trailers, refrigerators. So 7% of our energy budget goes to pumping fresh water. Airports, hospitals, airplanes, boats, docks, everything is run on fossil fuels. So the best thing you can compare this to is what happened on Easter Island, where they used timber to power every aspect of their civilization. They used it to build statues. They used it to construct boats, to go out and get fish. They used it to build their homes. They used it to transport these statues, to do pretty much everything. And when the timber supply went into decline, their population crashed from about 10 to 20,000 down to 150.
Yeah.
And that's typical. Whenever a species, what we're experiencing is it's a population crash. Anytime a species is given access to abundant resources, their population grows in exponential fashion. It's a J curve, so it starts off flat and it shoots straight up, and it goes straight down. And if you look at the human population, it's done the same thing. And the last generation has, well, in every case, in every species, the last generation still has 50% of the resources left. And that last generation consumes everything before it dies off. And like I said earlier, we've probably consumed about 50% of the oil. So we're in the last generation of humanity as we know it. So
wow, that's a big too big to really even contemplate. Yeah. Well, a lot of the renewable energy advocates are pushing wind, tidal, geothermal, and solar energy as replacements for oil. And I've got my own complaints about those because I lean towards the really far out fringe stuff. But
right.
the energy densities on those really aren't high enough for vehicles or mobile power sources, right?
Right. If we went into a remote village in Afghanistan and hooked them up with solar panels and windmills, their life would be amazing. Okay. We could never have built our current civilization on these sources of energy, and on the sources of energy that we hope to replace oil with. You could never have done it. Just to give you an example of how dense oil is, if you take a gallon of gasoline, the amount of energy contained in that gallon of gasoline would take 600 hours of human labor to produce. And people say, well, how can that be? I just can't imagine it. Well, if you think about it, you put a gallon of gas in your car, and your car can go, let's say, 25 miles per gallon. How long would it take you to push your car 25 miles? Probably a pretty long time. So that, you're getting for $2 the amount of energy, that amount of energy, okay? So none of these alternatives, they just don't pack the punch that oil does. And even if we had scalable alternatives, you can't scale them up to the degree that we need. We use 30 billion barrels of oil per year. We use about the energy equivalent of 20 billion barrels in natural gas. And natural gas is a vapor, it's not a liquid, but in terms of the energy equivalent. So that's the energy equivalent of 50 billion barrels right there. And natural gas is also set to peak on a global scale pretty soon, and it's going to decline at an even faster rate than oil because it's vapor, so it just kind of falls off a cliff as opposed to going down a downslope. So if we had 25 to 50 years, peace and prosperity, lots of investment capital, a couple of technological miracles, we might be able to scale up solar and wind and all these others, nuclear, atomic energy, hydro, wind, etc. We might be able to scale them up to get the energy equivalent of 3 or 4 billion barrels of oil per year. That's a tremendous amount of oil. It's the amount that was used per year, I believe, during World War II. Now, prior to up to World War II, in the years leading up to it, we used only like 2 billion per year.
Well,
so there's really nothing we can do to. And once this decline really gets underway, we're going to be losing probably about a billion barrels per year due to depletion. And we need a billion extra to keep that fractional reserve banking system going. So these renewable alternatives, just we should be investing in them, and they're certainly better than nothing. But they're not going to stop a crash. Really, what's going to happen is rich people are going to have access to them, and you're already seeing this happen. You'll see you see this in local communities. I suspect you may. Maybe not with George Bush, but maybe on a state level at least. You'll see taxes or some type of fees imposed on everybody to bring down the price of solar power or bring down the price of a hydrogen-powered car for the super rich. So somebody who's really rich will have a hydrogen-powered car that they get the hydrogen by using solar panels to crack get the hydrogen from water. And the car will cost $200,000 instead of $500,000 because you and I are paying the taxes to fund that. But it's not going to be helping the average person for the most
Sure,
part.
sure. Well, the Department of Energy is currently conducting a review of cold fusion, and from my perspective, that's one of many new energy technologies. The densities for cold fusion are a heck of a lot higher than oil, but it does have some challenges. One of those is converting the energy from heat to electricity. Although there are some that are direct pickups, like the plasma volt technology. In terms of cold fusion, though, do you think that right now they're getting up to 10% on a good day, I believe, quote unquote, over unity or whatever you'd call the equivalent in cold fusion. Do you think if the DOE goes forward with that and the Fed puts money into it, that we might start alleviating some of these issues before they happen?
Well, they already are happening. See, that's the thing. People think this crisis is off in the future. It already is happening. Okay, people got to understand, per capita energy production peaked back in the 70s. It has been declining ever since. We're in Afghanistan. We're in Iraq to deal with peak oil. We're going to be invading Iran, Syria, Saudi Arabia, West Africa. We might be going to war with China, Russia. And with this administration in power, their way out of it is they think the rapture's coming. Okay? They believe, and this is according to evangelical doctrine, that God put plenty of oil in the ground for his believers. So we're not, the crisis has already begun. It's not off in the future. Even if we had a more, welcoming administration in power, you got to understand something. It's not just a matter of finding alternatives, even something miraculous like cold fusion or whatnot. I need you, or people like you, I don't mean to be a party pooper, I need you to have the energy equivalent of 1 million, 2 million, 3 million barrels of oil per day. I need it online right now, today. Not in 5 months, not in 5 years.
Yeah, that's
okay?
a big
Not
challenge. That's
in
a
15
big
years.
challenge.
If you can't produce it today, it doesn't do us much good. I hate to say it, but it's too little too late. Even if it's scientifically viable, it's not. And I wish people all luck. I hope the research goes great. I hope you get funding, so on and so forth. But in terms of the average person, and that's who I gear my message to, is the average person who's just paying the bills and trying to get by. These technologies are not going to do you any good at all. They're not going to save you. They're not going to prevent you from losing your job when the economy continues to collapse, which it has to, because you can't grow the economy without an excess amount of energy. We need 250,000 additional jobs per month just to keep up with population growth. So we're even on a good month nowadays, we get 100,000 extra jobs. So even in a good month, there's a net shortage of 150,000. It's just going to keep getting worse and worse and worse. And so these alternatives are great, and I hope you guys or your colleagues get funding from whoever. But it's not going to. The average person needs to get themselves an organic garden, a bicycle, and probably a shotgun.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Well, if we're too late and we do just pretty much completely run out of fuel, or the prices get so high that nobody can do anything, I'm a big advocate of looking at our current city systems as life support systems. And when those shut down, how high would you predict the death tolls will be?
Well, like I said, you can look at the J curve of any species. That you can use 2 examples in my book. One is bacteria in a petri dish. They follow this J curve. They go, they start off flat, and they shoot straight up. The last generation has 50% of the resources left. They crash down to about 90. They lose about 98% of the population in that last generation. Same thing, there's a study done on St. Matthew Island back in the 40s, 50s, and 60s. They put 60 reindeer on this, I think it was 60, and inside of 20 years, the population followed a J curve, shot up to about 6,000. And then in the last generation, they had this vegetation on the island that the reindeer really liked, which you can now almost think of that as a fossil fuel, actually. Anyways, then the population crashed down to only 2% of what it was before. And then on Easter Island, they crashed down, over 98%. So if we follow the paths of other species, we're looking at a 95% plus reduction in the population. Now people say, well, but we're human beings, we got a lot of brains, right? Well, we do, and that's why we developed atomic weaponry to blow each other up with. So, and again, let me emphasize, hopefully the last election has made this perfectly clear. There's a large contingent of people in the U.S. who feel that we need to start a atomic war in order for the rapture to happen so that people can go to heaven. So we're not going to solve this peaceably. And most of our leaders, top to bottom, left to right, they're all invested in weapons companies.
Yeah.
If you want to know what somebody thinks is going to happen, look where they put their money. And they've all got it's so rampant it doesn't even do any good to name names. Every Democrat, every Republican at the high levels, whether they're elected, appointed, whatever, they're invested in. I don't want to name any names of these companies because I just don't like to even name them because I feel like they're like Satan,
Sure,
But
sure.
So they're going to profit from the massacre.
Well,
because if you look right after Bush got reelected, the stock prices of all the weapons companies shot up.
Yeah.
Because they know what's coming. They more war.
Well,
and they're going to profit. So.
What about corn-based plastics as an alternative to polymers that are currently built from oil products?
Right, it's scientifically viable, but we're talking about a scalability issue. There's two issues. We're running out of arable land to grow food on. Okay, we right now have the average American uses 1.8 acres of arable land to get their food from. Okay, the agronomists tell us you need 1.2 acres. At current rates of population growth and soil erosion, we're only going to have 0.6 acres available per American. And I'm assuming most of your audience, the majority are in the U.S., so I tailored this to folks in the U.S. It's a global phenomenon, though. We're only having half the arable land we need. And that's not accounting for the effects of not having pesticides and fertilizers. So our land now requires pesticides and fertilizers because it's sort of like an athlete on steroids. You take the steroids away, and he can't even go back to what he was before the steroids. His body's totally destroyed.
Sure.
We've overworked the land and pumped it full of petrochemicals. So my point is this: we're going to be struggling to grow food to eat, not just to grow for fuel or to use as plastics. Yeah, it's technologically viable, but we need the people to understand. People who are hypnotized by these alternatives don't understand the amount of energy we need, nor do they understand that we need a constantly increasing supply of energy. So like I said, we're going to be losing 1 billion barrels a year due to the decline, but we need about an extra billion per year to keep economic growth going. So that's a shortage of 2 billion barrels per year. Now, it doesn't matter if you scale these alternatives up even to 1 billion barrels, because it's still not enough to keep the modern economic paradigm going. So you're still going to collapse. So people got to get ready to fend for themselves. None of these alternatives are coming to rescue any of us.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and this is kind of a little bit of a diversion, and I know this is probably going to go in my historic dumb questions category, but...
No, well, wait, say that again, historic what
question? my historic dumb questions category.
No, dumb questions.
Yeah, I'm feeling dumb already, but one of the things that now... So, we hit peak oil, things get a little bit worse for a little while, and then they get a lot worse, and we lose 95% of the population. Now, that remaining 5% or 2% or whatever it is, the last, couple of people on Earth, they're going to have a lot of oil, right?
No, they're not. No, see, look, if you get a die-off of 98% of the population, whoever survives that in 50 years... they're not going to have any idea how to, think about what you're talking about. You're not going to have civilization as we know it. You're not going to, we're looking at, unless we literally have some miracle from Jesus or from aliens or whoever, people aren't going to know, because you get people that see this is a lot more complex than just, we'll have 500 million people and then we'll have plenty of oil. We're running out of all sorts of resources: copper, silver, nickel, tin, all this stuff. Because industrial civilization has basically consumed everything.
Sure.
So we're looking, without some type of miracle at this point, we're looking at just a full-blown meltdown of everything. And again, you look at the last generation of any species, they pretty much consume everything.
Yeah.
So I don't expect the infrastructure. If 98% of people die off, the society that's left is going to be horrific, so, you know what I mean? They may not be able to pull the oil out of the ground.
Yeah, part of it's I know maybe I'm just a natural optimist, but I'm one of those people who's going to go down fighting, and in my case...
Right, you go down fighting, but the optimism gets killed.
Well, yeah.
Because optimism, let me tell you about what the optimism, this is one of those things where whenever everybody goes, well, I'm an optimist. And you, to go down fighting, I understand, but the word optimism, we got to get away from this. It's like a narcotic in our culture. Everybody's like, well, I got to be an optimist. Well, sometimes the bad things happen, you know. I mean, just to use it as an example, I read this is from a Holocaust survivor. I forget the name of the book. But he said that the optimists, the folks who were optimists were the ones who got killed. Because with each, things got worse and worse and worse. And what the quote-unquote doomsayers, the people who said, look, we're in a Holocaust, is what we're in. People say, well, no, I got to be optimistic, you know, and I got to hope for such and such to come save us. You know, the French resistance is going to come save us. The Allies are going to come save us, or maybe it won't be quite as bad as we think, or maybe this will happen, and none of that ever happened.
Well,
so you got to get ready to then go. You got to go down fighting.
yeah. No, it's interesting that you mentioned the Holocaust. I saw a movie. It was an HBO film called Conspiracy a while back, and it was actually produced from the notes of the Wannsee Conference. And it was interesting to see. To me, it was a movie about kind of subtle evil, I guess. None of the guys who went to the conference knew that they were designing the Holocaust until three-quarters of the way through it. And they have a scene in the movie where out of the 12, 13 people in this boardroom, all 9 of them who had no clue coming in beforehand, you know, the other 4 kind of sort of knew. 9 of them realize, you know, and they're halfway through, three-quarters of the way through their meeting. They realize what they're involved with. And that's the point where, well, after they get sick, they continue going through with it. So, you know, but it was interesting because it's the kind of bureaucratic think for the next quarterly budget kind of thinking that gets us into this.
Well, yeah, if you want, you know, you can look, because I think that up until now that the Holocaust is one of the worst things, worst examples of, you know, anything that's ever happened in the course of humanity. So we can look to that and learn a lot. We can look to the people who participated in it. Most of them didn't think that they didn't realize what they were doing, and the people who were the victims. Now, in this case of oil depletion, we're all the victims, and our enemy, it's not Hitler, it's entropy, who is much more dangerous than even somebody like Hitler, because you can't kill entropy. It's nature, you know. But people kept saying, well, no, it can't be as bad. No. Somebody's going to figure something out. No. So nobody dealt with it until it was too late.
Yeah.
So you see now with peak oil, people are finally starting to wake up just a little bit, and everybody assumes, oh, well, if we start doing A and B and C and D, we still got time, right? I'm like, no, you don't. Not on a civilization-wide level. Now, you yourself may be able to get yourself, you know, in some type of situation where you're going to, you know, be able to fend a little better. But the civilization as a whole is you know, done.
Well, I guess my final question here, this has been a really intense interview, and actually in some ways it's a little bit too dark compared to what I usually do, but, you know, the majority of research that I have on my website is labeled kind of by the public fringe science, right? Or, you know, I like alternative science, but it's the, you know, different names for the same thing. And one of the problems that we have had as a community, and there are thousands of people across the world who have been working on this stuff for decades at this point. One of the problems has been getting support. And I'm not even talking about funding. I'm talking about, you know, somebody films something working. It works consistently, repeatedly. They turn the light switch on, the thing produces energy or whatever. And they cannot get the media interested. They cannot get the government interested. They can't get any kind of interest. And I'm wondering, you know, now that we're at the doorstep of peak oil, when the government starts to flail around, I know it's kind of a small consolation, but for all those inventors out there who have been working on this stuff for decades, will they finally be able to get some recognition and finally get kind of a boost for their research?
No. The decision's been made. It was made 30 years ago. Okay? The decision is to go to war to get oil and kill whoever gets in the way. And that's the path we've taken. I think I'm speaking to you today, it's November, I don't know when this will be posted on your website. We're leveling Fallujah. We killed up to 200,000 innocent civilians in Iraq. We've dropped depleted uranium all over the place. And I wish everybody all the luck in the world, but, you know, we got to deal with reality. The government's not going to come and take your invention and, you know, use it, or no corporation. If they do, what they're going to do is use it and adapt it to go kill Iraqis or Saudi Arabians or, we got to go kill some Arabs. That's what they'll use your invention for. That's what we always use stuff for. You develop anti-gravity, I can tell you what we're going to use that for. Drop bombs on more Arabs.
Yeah.
You know, that's the path. And, you know, people got to realize this is part, what you're seeing unfold in the last 5 years has been planned for 30 years. We guess you can go online and Google smoking gun, the CIA's interest in peak oil, and then go ahead after that and Google UKI's alpha. We've had these plans in the books for 30 years. This is not anything. This did not just happen after Bush got elected.
Yeah.
So no offense. I wish everybody all the luck in the world, but you know what? It's like you know, when I was in college, I kind of had to come to the realization I was never going to play in the major leagues. You know, I mean, it sucked, but that's the reality. It just wasn't going to happen. Well, it doesn't mean I can't enjoy baseball and maybe play in an adult league or, you know, with my friends, or if I had kids, I can teach them how to play it, you know, so I can still participate in it. But my hope of getting recognition, you know, in a professional context, it just wasn't going to happen. It's painful to deal with, but I had to deal with it. And I know you probably don't want to hear this. I know your listeners or viewers don't want to hear it either, but you're not going to get any credit on a professional level outside of your own community for your work.
Sure.
And what you need to be dealing with is the fact that our economy's collapsing. We've got a theocracy now in power. They're never giving up power. And you think they're just going after gay people today. Well, it's going to get a lot worse. They think once they get rid of gay people or abortionists or whoever, that the economy will get better. But it's not, because energy production is declining.
Well, on that note, we need to end for today. I'm almost out of time, but I did want to say thanks for your time. And again, your book is called
No, thank you for having me.
Oh, absolutely. Your book is The Oil Age is Over, and it sells for $24.95 from lifeaftertheoilcrash.net. And now that people have had kind of a taste on the website of kind of what you've been writing about and where you're coming from on things, I'm sure that they will be visiting and asking lots more questions of their own.